Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, he's a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot and squadron leader and co-founder of Restore Liberty. Colonel, it's always great to have you. Boy, you talk about two different tales. I mean, we for months heard that these sanctions were to, quote, deter and prevent. And now you have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs saying, no, the only way we could have prevented Vladimir Putin from invading was to use Russian troops. Your thoughts?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Trace, for having me back on. I think that is a consistent theme of messaging issues within this administration. I mean, we've heard issues about chemical strikes and what the response to that would be and not being able to really answer it, that sanctions would deter, and now we're saying sanctions are more like a punishment. Then we talked about regime change or maybe not regime change, then we'll send MiGs or we won't send MiGs. I think that is just another example of the inability to get a consistent message across, which should be an easy message to develop across the senior leadership of military advisors and the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, we saw the same pattern in Afghanistan. We've seen the same pattern at the border with the inflation crisis. I want you to listen to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and then I'll get your response on the other side.
It may not be just a matter of a few more weeks before all is said and done. That first quote-unquote phase of the conflict, of the Russians have put it, was measured in weeks. This next phase could be measured in months or longer.
Months or longer, says Sullivan, and you have General Milley saying this war could go on for years. What does the United States and NATO do, Colonel? They just sit back and watch Russia just decimate Ukraine?
Well, I think we should also put ourselves in the shoes of the Russian planners and the military planners. One of the things that we've learned in discussions with people that in sources that we have on both sides of this conflict is that there are those in the Russian military who took part in the planning for this effort who specifically said that if they didn't capture Kyiv in the first 10 days after they moved across the border, that this conflict was not going to be near as long as they thought and would probably culminate sometime in June or July due to a collapsing Russian economy. They anticipated that. So although we could say months, maybe, there are arguments for that, I have a really hard time accepting that we could define this in terms of years, maybe in recovery, but not in terms of conflict.
Meantime, you have a lot of experts, including generals, who have been talking more about a nuclear war, right? About a nuclear conflict, as if the odds, right, are the longer this thing goes, that nuclear weapons may be only a matter of time. Your final thoughts on that, Colonel?
Well, I'm always concerned about the conversations, I guess, that we have about nuclear weapons and nuclear conflict as if we're trying to push that as an inevitability, and it certainly is not. However, this is ultimately Putin's decision. And if he decides to go that route, and I would argue that this conflict has significantly changed, and frankly, the world has significantly changed in a way that nobody can anticipate at this point.
I got to go very quickly here, Colonel, but is Vladimir Putin gaining more favorability in Russia because Russians believe that it's them against the world?
I have a hard time believing that, and I think when the casualties start moving back to Russia from Ukraine even more, that he's going to lose some of that traction. The goodwill he's gained is lost in many forms. It depends on how effective his propaganda systems are in Russia, painting what he wants the Russians to hear.
Yeah. Colonel Gaub, always good to hear you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Trace.